Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Art Vision Podcast. Our guest today is David Fatino. So David is a public speaker and abstract artist, and he often speaks about his challenges with cerebral palsy, narcolepsy, and the various other neurological conditions he had growing up. So the medical technology company Medtronic eventually came to his aid and developed a technology which David has used to limit the impact of his cerebral palsy since. And this was actually turned into a Channel 2 news story. And then he was later asked to speak at the Medtronic headquarters in 2018. So David, how are you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty great, man. Really excited about this. Obviously, we've talked for probably now half an hour. So actually, no, probably an hour. I think an hour. So it's been a little while. But I'm excited to get, deeper into this. So first things first, what have you been into lately, man?
Just been really finished up writing a book, and I just started getting into writing not too long ago, about a year ago. I just sat there and the idea of writing a book popped into my head, and after a while I just took notes and built up a good amount of poems and short stories, and then I was like, I'm going to illustrate it. So, that's what I've been really into is writing lately. A lot of writing and basically painting with words because I'm an artist. So I just chose a different medium.
Yeah. When you do you find, because I'd say I'm creative, but in not the usual sense of the word. I'm not, I don't consider myself an artist, a musician, and a painter, that kind of thing. And when I think of artists, I feel like we often put artists into boxes and go, okay, you're a painter, you're a writer. And I remember literally I felt this way my entire life, because I remember whenever I'd hear about UFC fighters or football players, I literally would put them in a box where I'm like, okay, Drew Brees can't be into any other thing interesting because he's a football player. And so my question to you is I feel like we love to put people in boxes, but you've just broken a box because you're now doing two things. You're an author now and a painter. So do you find that your painting is kind of taking a back seat to your writing, or are you doing both of them at the same time? How do you think that balances for you right now?
Well, when I got that pump, I started painting, and I painted over 350 paintings in a short amount of time, because my body was like, I can do this now. Cool. Let's go. Let's go. 5 paintings a day for months and months. And I have stacks and stacks of my paintings. And I wanted to now do something, because I could now do something because my body was more in control. So I was like, hey, I'm going to do that. And I went for it. And I painted a lot. And I'm still painting, but my brain clicked in one day and said, hey, let's go on the other side of the brain and let's let's kind of explore the painting with words. So, and that's difficult sometimes for certain artists to kind of bounce from that. It's a totally different medium. It's a totally different way of doing things. And my brain was just like, okay, we can do this. So I just kind of started out doing that.
And it's probably asking to choose your favorite baby, but which one do you prefer one? Do you prefer writing right now because it's more new, or how do you feel about both of them?
I think my painting has kind of taken a little bit of a back seat, because I kind of got a little burnt out after painting 300 and something paintings. You kind of get a little, you're like, yeah, I need to take, I just kind of, so that's kind of taken a little bit of a back seat. And so writing is more, I just want to write a lot. It's just, after writing my first book, a couple of days ago, I got just a rush of like these two ideas with the plot line, the title of the book, the base points of each, like what I want to highlight in the story, and then the ending, the conclusion of the story. I have it written on 2 pages, and it just it was like this. I don't know how to exactly describe it, but I was sitting here watching my TV, and then wham, like I was like, I need paper, I need a pen, I need to write this before I go to sleep. I need to write this down. And I have 2 books that I want to write, and I have all the main ideas of the book, and now I just have to fill it in and then add a lot more content to it. That's how I work. That's how I write my books.
So have you written, like you said, this book that you just did did you say short stories and poems or just poems?
Yeah. Short stories and poems.
So this is going to be your first like novel?
Yeah. 2.
Wow. Two novels. And
yeah,
I find, okay, because I actually studied novel writing last year. I was like, not formally, but just on YouTube, I'd look up authors like Brandon Sanderson, Patrick Rothfuss, some of the best-selling fantasy, science fiction, like thriller authors in the world right now. And I was just fascinated with stories because I'm a huge reader. I read every night before bed, probably about an hour before bed. Like I'm reading a sci-fi series called Red Rising right now. And it's just, I love it. It's blowing me away. But I've always been curious about, like, essentially one of my main curiosities in life is, where do ideas come from? Because like when you're sitting here and you're saying, I was watching TV and an idea came, my first question always is, where did that idea come from, and whose idea was that? Like, do you feel like it was your own idea, or do you think it was almost like the freaking universe or something just plopped something into your head and chose you to write it?
Well, as a kid, I had a great imagination. My family would always say, your imagination is intense. I'd be a person, make up stories and come up with these wild stories. And now that I'm able to access more of my brain, because I'm not thinking about all the negative stuff, it probably was like a gear in a car or an engine, that first like spark, and then that fuel, right? So I think it was I think it was the universe, but I think it was up here all the time. And I just the universe just was like, okay, it was like a light switch. That's how I kind of it was it literally was so clear that I wrote it down and woke up the next day and went, I am glad I wrote all that down before I went to bed, because this is going to be awesome. And I think a lot of it's universe, but a lot of it's in here, in me, right here. It's been there. And I think I'm able to access more of my brain in different parts, probably, now that my body doesn't feel so in pain all the time. My brain's probably relaxed a little bit, because cerebral palsy, it's all about neurological, right? So neurologically, now that my brain's able to actually concentrate on different things, that's why I've gotten all the sparks of creativity and stuff like that, is just my brain, my brain and the universe kind of combined.
So do you feel because this is interesting.
It was intense, by the way. It was intense. The feeling that came into my front of my brain was it was just like this. It was really, really intense, like a lightning storm, like like a volcano explosion, like a huge, massive earthquake, like the shifting of something in my brain was like, and it came, boom. It was just like this, you need to do this.
What kind of book is it? If you can you tell us the genre?
Well, it's going to be like one of them is going to be about a boy that lived in a cave that felt like that's his comfort zone, so he couldn't go outside of the cave. And then one day he kind of opens it, and it talks about anxiety and getting out of that, like that comfort zone area, or just your mind in that cave. It can kind of go over any direction that you want to take it, but that's one of my ideas, is how this boy that lived in a cave, and that's all he kind of knew until he stepped out of the cave, and then slowly he understood more about life. It's kind of rough right now because it's just an idea I wrote down, but I'm going to start working on that. But it's going to be interesting.
Well, that's just a cool metaphor for life. Like, I feel like that's like the classic metaphor. So much so that, was it Plato or Aristotle who wrote the allegory of the cave? How essentially, what was it? It was that there was a cave people were stuck in, and they couldn't move. I think they were chained in this cave or something. And they're looking at the wall, and there was like a fire behind them, and the fire was playing with their own shadow and showing them all these images. And like, they could only look at the cave wall. And then what happened was, suddenly one day they woke up and they weren't chained anymore. And so they look to their left and they see, light. They see just a speck of light, and they start walking towards the light. And then as they get closer, they realize that there's this entire world outside of this cave they've been stuck in. And then the crazy thing is, though, and this is kind of the metaphor for human nature, is that when they were given the opportunity to go out into the world, it was so terrifying, so reality shifting. It was almost psychedelic. It was almost like when you do a psychedelic trip and it's just too much, and you want to get back to reality. And in that moment, they chose to go back to the cave because it's familiar, even though it was fake, even though it wasn't real, even though it wasn't reality. And it's the idea like Brave New World and stuff, and a lot of these dystopian fictions, right?
Show.
The Truman Show, right? It's this idea of like, if you were living a lie your entire life and you were faced with the truth, would you accept it? And the fact is, so many of us wouldn't.
And that's the thing, is like, that's where I was. And I'm still that boy that's kind of halfway in the cave and halfway out. And I'm like, and slowly, by doing this kind of stuff, it makes me realize this is how you get out of anxiety. This is how you grow through things. If I stay in my comfort zone forever and I don't put myself out there and do things like this, it's gonna, I'm gonna look back and I'm gonna be like, why didn't I do that? Like, like it's this thing where you get in that comfort zone, and that's what you feel comfortable. So you're like, oh yeah, I'll just go on, like autopilot mode. This is familiar, so I'll go here. And what I've noticed, and what I continue to learn, because I'm not perfect at this at all, but is that to constantly, slowly nudge yourself into that anxiety area. You can step back. You can always go back to your comfort zone, but try, because if you don't ever try with your anxiety, it's going to get worse. And, you know, I don't like anxiety at all. I don't think anybody really does, but you know, that's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed with me, anxiety is just like anything, it's a muscle, or essentially the tools to deal with anxiety are just a muscle. Just like working out, right? Like if like I work out.
And that's what I do with my physical therapy at the gym.
Exactly. Where it's like, you know, let's say like I'm working out 5 days a week. If I stop for a month, my body just, you know, pretty much like kind of starts to shrink. And then if I try to go back to the gym, it is painful. I'm like, wow, how did I do this before? And the fact is, I actually didn't do it before because I was conditioned and my workouts were almost boringly simple. Like it was just like you get so used to it that you're lifting triple what you would have, but it's easy. And like even the burn isn't that intense. Like you have to continue to push yourself. So what I'm saying is like with anxiety, it's the same thing. It's like when you first start facing anxiety, it's terrifying. I remember when I really started to face my own fears in my life, just about 2 years ago. I probably started really facing my fears about when I was 3 years ago. And I remember those first days, man. I was writing journals every day. I still write journals every day. And when I sometimes from time to time look back at these journals, I can feel the weight of my vocabulary. I can feel the heaviness of my experiences in the kind of chronic anxiety and stress I was under, that this was really scary. And then when I look at like my journal entries now, like they're so almost like just simple, you know, even though my life is a lot more technically stressful now because I have a YouTube channel and I have a podcast, but I'm so lucky that I got used to dealing with stress when I was younger, because now when I look back at like stressful times on YouTube, they're nowhere near as much as like asking a girl out 3 years ago. Like, you know what I mean? Just like the things like, you know, getting past my fear of rejection, getting past all these fears I had, they were so terrifying, but they're so simple. And now things that are way more monumental aren't nearly as terrifying as those simple things, because you just get used to it. You build the momentum of just, and you start to build up faith in yourself that like, okay, this is stressful, but God, I've been here 500 times before. And I know if I just move through it, tomorrow will be okay, or a week from now will be okay, or a month. But like, you just get used to it. You know what I mean?
I think for me, like the biggest anxiety thing for me, and I still feel it, and I realize I need to channel that if I'm going to do TED Talks and I'm going to do things in the future, is I need to be, I need to be able to handle that. So when I went out to Medtronic and I met with the upper people of the company, I was shaking like there was no tomorrow. And I'm sitting in the chair having a wonderful, wonderful lunch. And they put me at the head of the table. Great. Thanks for putting me at the head of this boardroom table.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm shaking. And they're like miking me up. I'm like, oh my God. Oh no. And they're like, so we're walking into the room, you know, that room that you saw when they interviewed me.
Yeah.
I walk into the room. I'm like, oh my God.
How many people were there?
There were probably like 35, 40 people in the room, but they were broadcasting it all over the globe to every Medtronic location. So I'm like,
oh yeah.
I'm like, oh no. I get this feeling of like, I'm like starting to breathe a little hard, and I'm looking over at everybody, and they're like, David, sit over here. And I'm like, okay. And before they bring me up, because they have to do the introducing thing, my anxiety, I'm sitting in the chair. I'm like, I want to get out of this. I want to do this. I'm running in my brain. I'm like, literally, this is the biggest thing I've ever done in my life. I'm like, I'm breathing, and they call me up, and I sit in the chair. And the minute the camera gets on me, like snap, go mode.
Yeah.
All that anxiety stuff. I'm like, I can't, they flew me out here. They paid for my hotel. They took me out to a nice dinner, nice lunch. They showed me around the whole place. It's go time. Like it's now so inside I was screaming and yelling and running, running, but on the outside I held it together, and I'm like, and then after it was over, I'm like, oh my God, I did it. I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. So for me, it's like, that was one of the biggest anxiety things. And it made me realize if I can do that, I can do more, and I can continue doing what I'm doing. But if I let that anxiety really stop me, that wouldn't be good.
Man.
So,
yeah. And it's so interesting. Like I actually, yeah, dude, you were I did my first public speaking talk in 2018 as well. Actually, that's actually funny that we were, and it was different times. What month were you?
The one where when I did the talk,
Medtronic, yeah.
it was in September.
Dude, that's crazy. Mine was in May, so like it was really, really similar times.
Dude,
but it's dude,
that was
it's like
the worst. That was the worst anxiety, man.
It was, and like I remember mine too, because I had
Scream.
I definitely had I had a fair amount of anxiety too before I was going up. Oddly enough, I had a really good support system. Like I had some kind of colleagues and stuff who were there, who put me in that position to do that talk. It was at the Self-Regulation Institute, hosted by Lakehead University, and yeah, I remember I was pretty nervous before I went up, and I don't know if it's the same thing with you. So I was nervous when I stepped up, and I just looked out, and I was just like, "Oh fuck, how am I going to do this?" And mine was like, yeah, I think it was like a 30 to 45 minute talk or something, and I was just like, "Holy shit!"
Mine was about the same.
Yeah, I think those are usually for kind of not keynote speakers. I think that's the usual kind of thing.
Yep.
And so I remember looking out over at everyone, and it was just, I was nervous, but just like you, the moment I pressed play, it was about 5 seconds where I was nervous. I fumbled my first few words, but then, man, like 25 seconds in, I just, where you said you consciously thought about the fact that they flew me out here, they paid for my food, they're doing all these great things. I wasn't even thinking. Like my brain went black. I didn't even know I was there anymore. And I just went in this flow state. And it was just
where I was. Yeah,
it was a success. And like people like it ended up I smashed it. I smashed it. And I was cracking these jokes that I don't know where the fuck they came from. People were all laughing and stuff. And just when I rewatched my talk, I was like, oh, that went really well. But like, I couldn't remember a single part. Like I blacked out. And then when I finished, when I was walking off the stage, it was like, okay, lights back on. It was like almost my consciousness went away. Another consciousness came in, took the reins. The moment I finished, that consciousness left, my consciousness went back in. And then I was just back to myself. And yeah, people started coming up to me and saying shit. But it was so weird. And the fact is, the thing I have faith now in is that it doesn't matter what the avenue is. Give yourself 25 seconds and you'll get in that flow state. So when you're doing TED, you're only going to have anxiety for probably the first 30 seconds a minute. And yeah, you'll be nervous. You'll fumble your first words, guaranteed. You're like, I'm here to talk. Yeah, like, you'll just like be fumbling your words. But dude, a minute in, you're gone. You're not there. And then you'll be walking off TED, and you'll just have this like cold sweat just appear. And you'll be like, holy fuck, I just did that. And you'll be shaking again for some reason, kind of.
Dude, for me, when I was doing that talk, the The first question that they asked me, I was like zoned in. I answered it. The second one, I forgot what he asked me. I forgot. I was sitting there for a minute,
No way.
thinking in my head, and I somehow grabbed a rabbit out of my arse, and I was like, oh, and it totally worked. But I forgot. And I, in my head, was like, oh, shit, I'm so screwed. And like the main big people of the company were sitting right in the front row where the camera was. So I'm like, I forgot. I can't just stand up and be like, I forgot. Can you ask me again?
Yeah.
So I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Oh, really? And I just picked up on I answered all the other things down the line. But that was the moment where I was like, oh, no.
You were in your own way. You were thinking too much.
But then I picked it up somehow and made it work. But nobody knows that. No one knows that. Not anybody ever. This is the first time I'm telling someone. Like I literally was like, and I look over at him and he's like, and I look over at the other two that are on the stage and I'm like, oh my God. Like, and it was completely silent. So I was like, that was even worse.
Yeah.
And it just, this moment, and I just, boom, okay, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and then it went on, and there was some laughter at the end of that interview, that talk that I did. And it, it was, so anxiety and kind of having hiccups, you gotta flow with it. And that's how I did it. And I pieced it together somehow.
And the craziest thing is when we look back at that, at the time it was so stressful, but now I look back, I'm like, oh dude, I wish I was back there again. I remember the emotions, I remember the excitement, I remember the nervousness, I remember you felt alive, dude, eh? Like, don't you remember just like right now, I love my life. I love what I'm doing. I love doing this podcast. I love doing this YouTube channel. I love talking to you. But like, I've kind of got a bit comfortable doing this, honestly, where I remember how uncomfortable I felt there. And I felt alive, where like, I don't really feel alive, when I'm doing these podcasts anymore, because I did at first when I was nervous, and you can see the earlier podcasts, they're a mess. But like, yeah, there's a thing where like, it's so funny that a lot of the time, the hardest times of our life, they're so hard at the moment, but we always look back at them in fondness. And we always tell these, and like the great thing is when you can joke about it. Like if you were kind of nervous about it and you're like, oh, I can't tell anyone that I freaked out. Like when you're holding on to that, that's horrible. But when you can laugh about it, then you're like, oh, dude, like I'd love to go back and make a joke out of myself again. Like, and even the great thing with you, dude, is you're going to do a TED Talk. It's like you get to go through this over again. And then you get to be super nervous. And then in another,
that's my goal. And that's
2 years after that, get to look
for.
back. Exactly. Like so do you have any idea when you want to apply for your TED Talk yet?
I think soon, because now I'm built up. I'm slowly building up my skills. So the thing about the TED Talk, and I don't realize it, is I didn't write the best. I'm going to have my editor edit my application, my essay to TED Talks, because it wasn't the best written. So, that matters a lot. So, this next go around, I'm going to have my editor that edited my book to look at it and actually edit all the grammar mistakes and make it more polished, help me polish it up, because I think, I made it was bad. So, I now realize I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. Like, I should have worded that whole thing. It doesn't even flow, right? So, but I think this time around, because I've added more tools to my bag of things, I'm not just painting. Now I'm writing and I'm talking and I'm like I'm in multi different things, and I'm going to write it. When I write to them, I'm going to put it more, it'll flow better.
Yeah.
And it'll impact better. Cause now I learned, you can't just, no. So,
Nah, dude, I am so excited for you, man. That's fucking awesome. I would like you have to send me the link when you do that TED Talk. And dude, I can't wait to watch that, man. And
I think it's gonna, you know what? I believe that, they will, next, the big TED Talk, like big TED, not just this, they have like smaller ones. They have
hold on, David. Hold on. Can you just repeat that? Because you actually cut out there for about 5 seconds. So go back. You want to get on to the next what?
Yeah, the next TED Talk that comes to Reno, Nevada. The big one comes here.
Oh, shit.
Like the big TED Talk comes here once a year because it's Reno and it's, it's the biggest little city in the world, that's what they say. So they come right here. And so I'm next year, I'm going to be way more prepared, and I'm going to be like continuing to work on talking and continuing to work on delivery and the vocal tone and the range and how I project my voice. And I'm constantly learning things up here so that when the time comes this next time around, I'll have more things that I've done and that I'm doing that will, when I apply to the TED Talk, the likelihood of that being accepted is probably going to happen, and I know it'll happen because it wasn't the time for me at that time. I wasn't fully ready to continue to. I said to myself after Medtronic, I'm like, I'm ready to do a TED Talk right now, but inside I was like, no, you're not. So I think now I'm like, all right, I like it. I need to continue to do this because this actually helps. And it's all about improving and adding things to your skills. And, it's just such an awesome thing that I have all these opportunities in my life that are right in front of me, and I'm going towards them, and I'm building that momentum. And I think in life, that's all you have. I mean, you have to go and do it. You have to put it out there, and you never know the way the internet works and the way the world works and the way things happen. You just have to give it a shot, try. Because if you don't try, you really won't ever know if you fail or if you don't. And if you do fail, that doesn't mean that like you need to stop. It just means that, like when TED Talk said, no, we're not right now. You're not, we don't think you're ready, like that. Did I stop? No, I decided to write a book and add more things to my skills. Oh, okay. Boom. And then you climb the ladder again in life, and you climb again and you climb again. And if I stopped when I got to fail, or no, like what about all the other artists in life that heard the word no? What about all these different athletes that heard the word no? What if those guys just decided to not play, like Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers? What if Aaron Rodgers was in high school or college. He was like, I don't think I'm going to do this football thing anymore. And it's like he self-failed himself. So, I think that's kind of, yeah.
No, that's really interesting because, no, man, you and we had similar paths in 2018 because I remember after I spoke at my convention, dude, same thing. I was like, fuck yeah, I'm going to go do a TED Talk. I went and I applied and they did the same thing. They declined my application too. And looking back, I'm like, oh, thank God they said no because it was all ego. Like I, at my core, didn't feel, because I realized a year after I was declined, I'm like, I had nothing to say. I didn't have anything to say. And and the thing is too, like when you're talking about writing this application, you know, you're speaking a lot about tools, right? You're adding new things. And for sure, you know, they're going to look at that and be like, oh, cool, he has more tools. But that, I don't think that's the thing that's going to make them accept or not accept you. I think what the fact is that anyone can write down, like, I guarantee you, if you wrote that same application, but you wrote poet, writer, podcaster, they'd still decline you because it's not what you said in your application. It was how you said it, your vocabulary.
Yep.
There's a certain way you write and a way you speak that you can't fake. People can feel authenticity. And when you were writing that first application, they felt who you were in your words. And now, sure, you're going to write down poet, you're going to write down author. They're going to be like, oh, cool, he's a poet and an author now on top of those things. But it's not the fact that you're a poet and an author that's actually meaningful at all. Like, I don't care. You can be a shitty poet and a shitty author. Like, I don't care. But the fact is, not only have you added these tools, but who you are at your core essence, that's changed. That's changed. And the way and who you are, that's a different person. That's the person that they're going to say yes to this time. Like, even if you weren't a poet and a writer, but you are the person you are today, they would have accepted you.
I think I'm ready now.
Exactly.
I think I am. I think at that time I was on that like Medtronic, like super.
Yeah, dude, you're on the high. You're on the high. You're high on life.
Dude, I was like, I got it, bro. I got it. Yeah. And then, boom, reality hit me when I got back home. And I'm like,
Yep.
And so it's like, you realize sometimes you think you're like ready, but no. But now you're right. I have changed, and it's internal. And that, like how I told you at the beginning, how that like light pops in, and how like that, just like that boom, like popped in. That's kind of like what's been happening a lot lately. Is I internally am getting these like bursts of like this quick like moment where I realize like now I'm starting to get finding my own flow state, defining my own reality, defining what I want in life, me, not anybody else, me. I am the one that's defining where I want to go with my life, what I want to do with my life. And it's such a great feeling living where you're like, man, I'm happy to have a roof over my head. I'm happy to have food. I'm happy. I'm so happy to have all these things that before I took a lot of them for granted. I was like, whatever. I have this, I have that. Now it's like, no, I am grateful. Like having that humble, grateful feeling inside, knowing that you're happy with what you have and that you're building towards something, you feel it. Like it's this increase of like self-confidence, not cockiness, not like over like, oh, I'm number one. No, I'm confident in myself. Yes, I have moments of like, everybody does have those moments where they're like, I don't know. Me now, it's like what you were saying, that you internally, you're different, man. You said it good that way, because it's like you feel it, right? You feel that internal change. And yeah, you're right on about that, man.
Yeah, and I don't think it's not a loud bravado and it's not a loud confidence. That it's not that. It's actually
No.
it's almost peaceful. It's very peaceful.
Yep.
It's just this sense of like, yeah, I can do that. Like, you know, I will do a TED Talk one day. And I'm not exactly waiting as much as I'm waiting for the light bulb that you talked about, you know, the
Yep.
message from the universe. Because even right now,
Yep.
like, I could do a TED Talk. I could go up and bullshit about like my YouTube channel or my podcast or shit I've done. Like, but I'm not inspired by that. Like, it would be bullshit. I wouldn't be passionate. But I know there's going to be a time when it's just going to hit me. And I'm
You know
gonna
what trip out is if we applied in the same year and got in
oh, dude.
same time, dude, because it's like our stories, our paths are very like we get it, you know, like between us, you get it, and it's like, it's just crazy to think that like I did the talk, you did it, and then it's like, you know, it's like life works in different ways, and to me, it's interesting how paths and how people and how things open up and close up and open back up, and you know, putting your foot forward and doing that, you know. It's just interesting how some of us in life think that we're so different from each other. But if you really look at it and you look at like the common things that you're into, and if you did like a chart or you did like a survey, and you would realize, oh, there's a lot of people that like to play video games. Oh, there's a lot of people that like to take photography. Oh, you like photography? I do too. Let's like connect. And like, it's funny how how those basic things, how these like bowling or painting or writing or, you know, all these different ways of like doing things. And yet people don't want to focus on those things. These are things that we would all enjoy. Hey, do you really like comic books? Oh, I do too. Let's connect, rather than push away and pull and be pushed away from each other. No, let's actually think about the basic things in life. And do we have it in common? Yeah. All right. Let's have a conversation. Like, but do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
I know exactly what you're talking about. There's way more things that connect us than divide us. And it's just like, obviously the media loves to jump on the things that divide us.
Yep.
Much more than things unite us. But yeah, you and I, as much as we have different upbringings, different challenges in life, like if from the outside, people would be like, oh, those are the most different people you can get. One, like cerebral palsy, narcolepsy, the other, none of that, right? But the fact is, yeah, it's like life. Like we both had our challenges, you know. With me, a lot of it was emotional, a lot of it was trauma in my upbringing and everything. So, but it led us to very similar places, and it led us to have oddly similar experiences. And that is interesting speaking to you about this, because yeah, I can't talk about this with everyone, because some people they can't get it. It's just they haven't been through it. There's until you've been through public speaking at a high level, you just don't understand the anxiety and the weird feeling you get from it, because it's the weirdest high. You love it and hate it at the same time. and it's like fire. It's so you crave it, but it can burn you. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is like as a kid, I always was like the person to take pictures of himself and just himself. And like I would give my grandma a whole photo album of just me, and she's like looking through it. She's like, yeah, I see. Where is everyone else? I'm like, no. This is here you go.
This is me.
This is me, you know, and throughout like my life, I now realize social media and things on YouTube and things just generally in life. I think people can have that connection and stuff within themselves. I think social media is a tool, right? It's a good tool, but if you spend all your time on it, maybe not the best idea. But I think, yeah.
I think we have to learn how to use social media because it is one of the most transformational technologies. It's amazing. It's like social media makes my entire lifestyle possible. Like I love telling people this, that the lifestyle and the occupation I'm going to build for the rest of my entire life didn't exist 20 years ago.
Nope.
Literally before 2000 and 2005. Like what? Like this is even more than like podcasting. I guess Howard Stern kind of did it back in the day.
Well, yeah. He kind of did.
But then again, like even YouTube, like YouTube is really what it is, right? It's the new mode. It's
the algorithm, man. The algorithm.
The algorithm and the way to do it by yourself. The fact is, like I couldn't do this the way I'm doing it 20 years ago because I would need a producer. I would need a radio station. I would need to play by the rules. I would need to dumb down my message. I would need to change myself. Where like literally I can do whatever the fuck I want now.
Yeah.
And I have no master. I can do it. And like now
that's what I love. That's what I love about this. That's what I love about it because honestly, I think YouTube is good in that way because it gives a person, you know, like you can upload from your phone, you can create a video on your phone and you know, upload it. And I've done videos where I'm mountain bike and go down like trails and stuff like that and jump off jumps and slowly understanding my GoPro and stuff like that. And, you know, it's like, I think a lot of it is like getting enough footage and getting enough different angles to make the video flow better and understanding that there's kind of, you have to pay attention to this, to the design elements of what you're presenting. And I'm starting to understand that more. I'll give you an example, something I'm working on right now. And so I like the movie Field of Dreams. Have you ever seen that? If you build it, he will come. You haven't seen? It's a great baseball movie with Kevin Costner.
Got it. Baseball.
If you build it, he will come, and he plows down half of his farm and builds a baseball diamond, and people are all calling him crazy and out there, and you know it's a good movie. But so I've always wanted to play baseball, like softball and stuff like that. And so I went to the thrift store, bought a softball bat and balls, and bought a tee because I love it. So I while I'm playing, I'll listen to Field of Dreams in my headset, and I'll be like, just like like, I'm going to knock this thing over the freaking fence. And I'm just like, you know, I'm just doing my thing. And that feeling right there and shooting it in different angles, it adds to the video. Instead of just one angle, having multiple different angles and positioning the camera in different directions and then chopping up the footage so that it flows better, that grabs people's eyes. And I don't know, I just think that stuff like that is interesting to me. And
yeah, I actually think it's so interesting that you mentioned that, because it made me think of how these technologies fundamentally alter the way we can perceive life. Because before we could take photos, the only angle of life that you knew was your own. Literally the only, like, you know, a tree is always a tree from your perspective. And people, and like, also here's the thing too, people are only who they are when you're around them. And what I mean by this is, like, when I'm talking with friends or family, and now that I have a podcast, I'm like, for the first time in your life, you will be able to see who I am when you're not around. You know what I mean? Because that's even a weird thing. It's like, because you only know the conversations I have with you. You don't know the conversations I have when I'm just with Christina or Jake or anybody, right? And it's like, you get to see a different side of me that you literally will never be able to see by yourself, because each person in our life,
dude,
like,
that's so right. That is so
weird.
Right that you said it that way.
Yeah, and it's so weird because, like, people, we are so complicated, and people and every single person brings out something different in us. Like, there's some friends where I am so analytical with. I'm so, like, we talk about quantum physics and we go down the rabbit hole for 3 hours and we start talking about the meaning of life. And there's other friends I talk about where we just crack South Park jokes for an hour straight. And it's like, I'm the same person, but different people. There's so much of me waiting to be expressed. And I need, and the thing is, I don't even need people, but just subconsciously, the way we connect with each other is, it's like there's an energy force or something, and I'm giving it all these potential energies, and there's like, they have their potential energies, and it's like a magnet. Some just don't link up and others do. It's like, oh, sweet, I have one idea, you have the other. It's like a puzzle, and then it's like that part of me comes out to experience the world. Parts of me that I don't even know I possess, because even the way my own puzzle pieces interact with one another is different than when I interact with you. Like, even the way I just articulated the thought of a TED Talk, I've never thought about it that way just by myself. I required your experiences, your vibe, your ideas.
We bring out different things in people. And,
exactly.
You know, I think that's why connecting and doing different podcasts with different people, and it gives you more of different perspectives. And because, you know, having all my conditions, you don't exactly know what it feels like, but us as humans, we connect on that feeling of different things we bring out of each other.
Yeah.
And I bring out different things with my one family member versus another family member. I won't talk about this, but with that family member, because that family member will go off in another direction. And, you know, and then, so we all bring out, and that's funny that you say that, because if we just met with different people and learned different things, like, I think that's what can help you see multiple different perspectives. Because I don't know what your life is exactly like, and you don't know what my life is exactly like, and we don't need to know that necessarily, because when we connect like this and it just flows, that's what matters. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. You have a PhD or I have a general associate's degree. Who who cares? It's about the connection that we have with people and bringing out different things in people, that you can bring out something in me that normally no one else. So it's like when you say that kind of thing, it's like, that's what sparks that light. That can help spark that light that I was talking about. Like when we were talking last time, I was so sparked inside that I was like, so pumped. I got my book on, and then I'm going to do a podcast, and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to keep going. And it's like that momentum builds and builds, and then it's like supercharged. Oh, I'm doing something else that's new. Okay. Like, so that whole flow to me is really great, you know. Something else I want to talk about is, you know, with everything going on now, with everything, I think a lot of people are doing a lot of things with virtual reality. And for me, I found out that I can download a program to my computer. And basically I can use my PS4 headset on my PC and do some of the art drawings and make my own virtual museum. I found out that I have enough of a headset. So all I got to do is buy an upgraded video card. When I do that, I can go onto my computer, hook my PS4 headset up to my computer using a program, downloading it. So now I don't even have to wait to buy a more expensive headset because I'll just use that one. So all I need to do is buy a video card, and I can create my own virtual museum and have everything laid out and create these wild design shapes and transform things and have people be able to go through it and see my visions. Because in the virtual world, you can do whatever you want. You can make creatures, you can make trees a certain way, you can make whatever your mind thinks of, and you can create your own virtual museum. And I've seen it done, and I know how to use the program. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is your grid. You can't go outside the grid. You can make your grid bigger. You can zoom in and make all these tiny little things and zoom out, and it looks like a world. Or you can create these wild shapes in a museum. Like it fascinates me because I was like, can I use my PS4 headset? I Googled it and it's like, yeah, you can do that using a program. Cool. Awesome. Like, so it's this feeling when you realize there are options, when you have enough certain things that you can use to build it. And it's fascinating to me. So it's like the whole virtual reality thing, you know, I was playing Iron Man, you know, on my PS4 virtual reality, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm all shooting out of it. I'm going like this, and I'm into the air, and I'm looking around going, this is nuts. This is crazy. Like, and I think that, you know, with the PS5 coming out, I think that the graphics and the ability to render more on the PS5 into the PS4 headset is going to make a difference because hardware matters. So they came out and Sony was like, yeah, the PS4 headset is going to be you're going to be able to use it on the PS5, and it's going to look better, and the visuals are going to look better, and it's going to be more crisp. Because it's not the headset that's always the problem. It's the processor and graphics card that really matter when doing virtual reality. So the PS5 is stronger, faster, and it's just better. So for the headset, so I'm just like, I love that kind of stuff, man. I love the idea of virtual reality so much. I just love it.
Yeah, man. I love the idea of like a virtual museum, because I love what you were saying, how in the virtual museum, there's no gravity. There's no laws of physics. There's no,
Yep.
yeah, like literally what you said, because like, I believe that when we as artists, when we're almost like vessels for creativity. It's almost like creativity is a force that flows through us and uses our muscles and our bodies to bring itself into this world in some weird way. That for the first time, it's like I said, like with the camera, we could start to view life through different angles. With audio recording, we can see people from different angles. And with virtual reality, we can see dimensions from different angles in a weird way, because we can for the first time explore the crazy recesses of your mind, David. Like when you're writing these, like not only are you writing, you're illustrating paintings, you're an abstract artist, which is like a whole other ball game. It's almost like, I don't know if this is correct, but like it's like a bit more like psychedelic. Like it's almost like when I've done DMT, when I've done mushrooms, when I've done LSD, like I've seen some crazy shit that I've only been able.
Edibles. That's what I do. I have my medical cannabis card, and I eat an edible, and I'm like,
dude, it's nuts.
And I'm just like, and I got a bunch of them, so I'm like, I eat a big one, and I'm like, yep, and I just like instantly like shapes and lines and different things. So when I'm in virtual reality, I've designed some things in my head where I'm like, oh, I can do that at that scale. So I can scale all my artwork to such a big size that the perspective will be different. And then I could give the person a different perspective by shrinking it and putting it in another spot of the museum and doing a line that shows how it changes and how the art changes per scale. So if you have an 8x10, that's a decent size. But if you have a 4-foot by 6-foot painting, that's going to give you a different perspective of that same artwork, that same piece, because the scale is different. And the human eye is like, when you see a big painting, for me, when I see a big painting, I'm like, whoa. Like the amount of effort that it took to finish a 4-foot by 6-foot painting. Yeah, that takes some dedication. Or you have an 8x10 that's delicately like put very slowly, very like, so there's all these different ways, and that's how my brain's very abstract. And I literally have thousands of patterns in my head right now. Colors, shapes, patterns.
Really?
Thousands. Like, I mean, I could paint for the rest of I will paint for the rest of my life. That's, yeah.
So
thousands.
When you're like speaking to me and you have all these ideas in your head, like, how do you know which ones to paint? How do you know which ones are art that you want to make? Or are they all ones that you want to make one day?
Well, like, for example, when I physically paint and I mess up and I'm like, no, you didn't add enough of this or that. I let it dry. I paint over it with white canvas paint. And I'm like, start again. You mess up, start again. Make a mistake. Oh, that mistake actually turned out to look actually really, really good. Oh my goodness. Didn't know that was going to happen. You wake up the next day and your painting looks completely different, dry. And you're like, oh, I'm glad I didn't just wipe out that one versus another one. So if you mess up, but that feeling of knowing which one, or like that I really like, or which one I'm feeling, or which one I'm really into. I guess it all depends on the painting, but it looks different dry. That's the other thing too. It looks completely different dry versus, let's say, when it's wet. When the painting's wet, it looks sometimes amazing, but then it dries and you're like, no, doesn't look good.
That's interesting. And also, like, when you were speaking about making mistakes, right? Like, so much of the time when
I've made a lot of painting mistakes.
Well, this is what my point is, that for most people who are not creatives, a mistake is wrong, right? Accounting. It's like, okay, you get accounting wrong, you're wrong. The crazy thing about art is how many of the most famous and the most brilliant artistic pieces, if you would ask the creator, are actually mistakes, right? Like, I'm sure that, like you just said, there are certain things that you think are mistakes in the moment, but you just let dry and you wake up the next day and they're your favorites. It's like, what is that? That's almost like chaos and order exploding onto one another. Where like the environment, like, you know, life itself is chaos. It's destruction. It's random. There's not order to it. And then we're always trying to impose order on the chaos. We're always trying to, your mind is chaos, David. And what you're trying to do with your art is you're trying to place order. You're trying to capture the chaos and bring it into the world in an ordered way. And sometimes you try to do that too much. And it's like, you have to make the mistake because that's the actual chaos. That's the actual art. You're like, almost, I feel like we get too caught up in the order of it, right?
And I think one of my paintings should be on your wall, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you one.
Dude,
I'll send you one of my paintings.
Oh, thank you, David. I love you, man. Thanks, dude.
I have like so many. it's crazy, but I also believe that a lot of artists say you can't give away your paintings, you can't give away your pieces. Well, I'm the one that created it. You didn't. I can do whatever the heck I want to do with my piece. Thank you very much. Because I've given away pieces to families that never could afford a piece of art. I mean, it's like, that makes me happy. When I give paintings away to people that really make me feel good, I'm like, okay, you know. So it's like, there's a thing with me where I put my emotions on the canvas. There are certain paintings that I have that help me through negative emotions or negative feelings or happy feelings. I paint, and so it depends on the mood, on how dark a painting is, like, or how light a painting is. It all depends on my mindset and my mood. So I can make an angry painting and be super angry and just like slam this color into this color and just smack the canvas with the brush, or throw paint at the canvas, which I've done. You know, it just, and it all just depends. But paintings are something that I love, man. I have a museum basically in my house that I wake up to every day. And it's great. You know, it's a really good feeling to look around and be like, yeah, I have my own museum. I'll change it up. I'll switch a couple of paintings out on my around my house. So, but yeah, I love paintings, and that's why I was like, man, you know what? I definitely want to give you one of my pieces.
Yeah, man. And like at the same time too, I feel like the idea of selling something is kind of like, in a way, a new idea, I think. Because kind of when we lived in tribes and, you know, small villages, our ancestors and stuff, like, we would take care of each other. We would take care of each other's children. We would babysit. We would trade. And we were never in this position of like, I will withhold something from you because I want more money. Like, you know, I just feel like, because it just wasn't set up that way. Like we took care of each other, right? So the idea of like giving things away for free, and that's supposed to be some crazy idea. It's like, no, that's our base impulse. That's our base idea. The thing that's not normal is like, oh, I would give it to you, but I need $500. Like that's the weirder one of like anyone who's like, oh, you should never give away something for free. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like the normal expression is giving it away for free. You're the one who's like putting this weird like structure onto life and like onto connection, on the communication. Like so much of the time, like we put too many structures onto things. We don't let things flow. Just go with your impulses.
I think a lot of people too don't realize, like, for example, some of the most famous artists were not rich when they were alive. Their paintings didn't sell for millions. What? Nope. Now, like my favorite artist, Jackson Pollock, a lot of his paintings sell for millions, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when he was alive, people weren't paying him that kind of money. So when certain artists are like, I want to make millions, okay, like you can just, but I think it's funny how people place money and the value so much on art, where that artist painting that thing, yes, he wants to earn a little bit of money. Everybody does. But at the time that he was alive, millions, get out of here. Like at that time period so for me, certain people are like going into art for the wrong reasons. They're going into something for the wrong reason, and it looks fake, and they kind of act fake because they don't really want that. They want that for the money. They want things for the money. They create YouTube videos strictly for money. And I get that. I get business and I understand that. But art is something that it comes from the heart.
Yeah. And you literally can't put a price on art. It's abstract. No. Like how the hell are you going to be like, oh, that's worth $10,000. That's worth $1 million. It's like, how? Like literally you're speaking about something that is almost like not even of this world. Like it's just, how do you do that? Like, it's such a weird thing to say, oh, this painting is worth. The moment you say something is worth, or like a piece of music, I'm like, God, like art is
why do you think a lot of artists and a lot of people are using, like, for example, like instead of buying a whole album nowadays, or even buying a song nowadays, you don't have to, because YouTube Music has every single kind of song you could think of from almost every artist. So you realize, okay, I don't have to buy any songs or anything. I just pay a monthly fee, and then I can stream all the music I want to, and I don't have to buy a whole album. And to me, it's like, hopefully the artist has a lot of rights on that song, and hopefully he has enough control to negotiate with YouTube a certain like percentage per stream that he gets. So streaming rights with music and artists, that can be a tricky spot, because now they're not selling albums, they're not selling songs. I mean, yeah, I technically you could buy a song, but most people aren't anymore. It's this streaming, all these streaming services. And it comes back to the artist needs to understand the rules and kind of understand how to negotiate things, and hopefully has a team behind him that will help kind of with that streaming stuff. So like UMG, Universal Media Group, They own a lot of artists and a lot of catalogs. They own a lot. They own a huge majority. So to me, it's like, how much is that artist actually getting? And sometimes nowadays, a lot of their money has always come from concerts and merchandise, not technically anymore the actual music, physical media, or even digital. It's money's being made on concerts. That's how a lot of artists make a ton of money, especially with those backstage passes, $3,000, $4,000, $500. It's like it kind of, you realize that's where they're making their money.
Yeah. Yeah. Go on.
They're just not making money from, they're making money from some of the streaming songs. Don't get me wrong. But majority of the chunk of what they get is from concerts, meet and greets, appearances, like that.
Yeah. No, 100%. And the weirdest thing is I find like how art fits into our time period is very weird too. We're in a very structured time period where it's kind of insanity when you look at the price controls that we have on music. For example, not too long ago, the average price of a song was either 99 cents or $1.29. And the weirdest part about that is that has nothing to do with the quality. It has nothing to do with the length of the song. Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin was priced the same point as Justin Bieber's Baby. And I'm not saying as a slight to Justin Bieber, but I literally mean that one is essentially a dumbed down pop song by definition. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure if they had it behind the scenes, it's probably really cookie cutter, right?
It's not a Stairway to Heaven.
They probably quickly flew through a few pages of instrumentals and it was like, okay, like that one. And then, okay, I want you to sing it in this melody key. And he's like, okay. And then they make the song. And then you get Queen, right?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian Rhapsody. Like how is that song the same price as a modern day pop song? Like that.
That makes a lot of the networks.
I know. It's rhetorical, but I know why. I know how it's done. But if you actually look deeper into it, it's insane. It's like, where did this 99 cents for a song come out? Like,
Apple, the Apple Store, the iTunes Store. When that price hit, everybody stopped buying. All the CDs went bye-bye in the stores. They went gone. Because why? You can buy a friggin' song for $1 and you don't have to buy a whole album. Sometimes there are certain artists, okay, they have 5 or 6 songs. Great. They're awesome. But then you're like, the 10 other songs, you're like, what? Skip. I really, I look into that, and it interests me because the way media is nowadays, it's a different. We're in a different time period, like you were saying. We're in a completely different time period, and YouTube is a great example. A lot of people. There's a lot that people don't know about uploading exactly and that navigating YouTube and no,
100%. It's just art has a hard time in general fitting into structures, but by definition,
put a price on it. It's hard.
It's just like when I think about putting a price on a song, putting a price on Stairway to Heaven, it's like, oh my god, how do you put a price on that? Or how do you put a price on your paintings? How do you put a price on David Cho's paintings? Like, just these people that just make these insane works of art, and you're like, okay, so you're trying, because it's all based on comparison. It's all based on genres. It's all based on, okay, you're similar to this artist, and that artist we've kind of put at $99, therefore you're at $99 too. Even if it's like, well, I'm not that artist, and my piece of art isn't that piece of art. Because when you look at a piece of art, sure, you're looking at a piece of art, but you're also looking at, like, things give off a resonance, right? Like, there's the music, and there's the subtle way the music makes you feel that is outside of what the music itself is on paper. It's like the way he hit the bend on the guitar, the way he put his emotion into his vibrato. Like, sure, okay, he hit G major with that note. He held it for 5 seconds, but it's difficult to figure out the emotion. Like, how do you weigh the emotion he put into that note? Or how he was crying when he was doing it, or how he was thinking about his daughter dying, or like fucking Eric Clapton, you know, tears of heaven, teardrops of heaven, or whatever.
Yeah, that one.
Right? It's like, how, like, yeah, okay, he hit the G sharp note. I don't fucking know, but you can't. There's just some things that are beyond articulation. And same with art. Just when you look at a piece of art, it just makes people. It connects with people in different ways. It's like, sure, like, schools are always trying to break down art and be like, okay, we know why this piece of art's great. We know why this sells for $1 million. But at a certain point, you go, not really. You don't really know. Because even that piece of art doesn't connect with you.
But a lot of it, though, when it comes to art, if you connect with the right family or the right person with wealth behind them, some of those people, actually, that's what helps. People don't exactly realize this, and some people don't want to admit it, but if you have somebody wealthy that likes your art so much and they buy it for a high price, and that gets out to other families and other people and other networks, that is what helps set your high prices. People don't exactly want to admit that all the time, but it's kind of true. You know, a lot of families that have $500 million or, you know, $1 billion or, you know, $1 billion or whatever, if they back a certain painting or they like it so much and that person buys it, your network of people that are going to be coming to you for art is just going to explode. So it all depends, and that's where it gets tricky, because if you do that, then technically some people will say you're alienating everybody else. But if you have a price point and you have it figured out where you're like, oh, I can sell this painting at this amount up here, and then you're like, well, I can make copies of that painting and sell it as a poster and sell that for $20, $25. And that's a reprint copy of my original piece that I sold for $1 million or whatever, $2 million or whatever. So it's kind of like that. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. And at the same time too, that art, like, at the end of the day, any piece of art is worth what someone is willing to pay for it. So, for example, that rich guy, he saw a piece of art and he fell in love with it so much that he was willing to pay $5 million because it meant something to him. He felt something. He connected it with it at a deeper level. Yep. But the problem is, after he sets the $5 million mark, you get all these people that just want to be like, oh, I also have David Fatino's art. I don't really give a fuck what it looks like. Oh, and okay, it's worth $5 million. Okay, here, I'll give you $5 million. But it's like, no, that was only worth $5 million because of how he connected with that piece of art. Yep. You don't connect with the art, and you're only paying $5 million because he did, and because you want to be seen in the same monetary light as them, or even like as dumb as it is, like people are like, ooh, like, this guy has such an incredible taste in art. Isn't that piece of art amazing? You're like, sure, I'll pay $5 million so you can think that my taste in art's amazing too. So it's just crazy how we get caught up in just following the leader. We get caught up in, oh yeah, that's now worth this much money. It's like, no, he was willing to pay that much for something that connected with him. Right.
And that's the thing too, is understanding that, materials cost money, things cost money, and you have to set your price at what you set it at. And, when you're beginning everything, you got to have to look at the whole range of prices. So like, for example, my book, I actually have it set at $20 because I realize the market, where I'm going into for the first time, $20 is a good entry price, and it still gives me a decent royalty. It covers all my printing costs and my other costs, and I still come out ahead at the end of the day. But it's I try to tell people, certain things in life, I mean, you have to value it at a certain value, because if you undervalue it, then you're not making anything, so. And if you overvalue it, if I sold my book for $50 or $60, dude, you're out of your mind. Like, what? So I think $20, I've kind of thought that was a decent price. So, and I wanted to show you, this is my book that I just got, and I got it from Amazon. And on the back, it talks a little bit about what's in the book and goes over a couple of my poems and stuff like that. But what I really wanted to do was read 2 of my poems, if you don't mind.
I literally was going to ask you to read your top 3 favorite poems. Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
So this one is called The Meaning of Growth. I'm getting older now, no longer a youth, not yet a senior, but a man trying to find the right path. I'm learning to make my own choice, molding a future with my bare hands, learning how to make my voice heard despite the crowded world. I no longer seek the need for attention, but I like the comfort. One that lets me explore my hunger for this world, a world of hidden messages. Sometimes I fall as I struggle to climb up, overwhelmed by the bigger picture, the years that lay ahead of me, and it must be difficult to accept that I'm building a life for myself, making mistakes that you cannot cure, choices you've never dreamed I'd make. And this is like the meaning of growth. So it has like little plants growing in stages and getting bigger as time goes on, and in the sun and stuff like that. So that was one of my favorites. What did you think of that?
I like that, man. I love the imagery. I love the painting. Actually, that really jumped out to me. That was beautiful, man. And then what is your other favorite?
Another one I really, really like. Okay, so wisdom is gained through good and bad experiences. Wisdom grows like a tree. And on this particular painting, particular page, I have roots of a tree that's going down into the ground, trying to.
Yeah. I see that.
So
yeah.
like it's like deep rooted, and so it's like wisdom is gained through good and bad experiences, and that's how it's all rooted in.
So where did you get that idea from?
I just know throughout my life that I've been through those good and bad experiences, and I know that people that are wise and people that have been through a lot more than me in life, I've learned from their experiences, and it's given me a different perspective. And I just thought about a tree and how, like, through times of struggle or through times of being like not having water or whatever, that tree is still stayed rooted in the ground through all those rough times in nature. So I kind of just pictured it like that.
That's really interesting because like that was a striking image to me, that painting, because it's almost like you're the tree. It's like you're the tree and you're growing, and the only way a tree can grow is if it can ground itself and gather nutrients and water. And it's like its tendrils, its roots are like experiences. And it's like those experiences, those various tendrils, those various roots are embedding themselves in the ground. With each one, it kind of brings up nutrients and water. And then so the tree grows as the root structure grows. Like that just popped in my head. I was like, huh. Like, because I love metaphors. I just love fractals. I love the idea of fractals and fractal geometry, because ever since I was a kid, I love the idea that life itself is a metaphor for itself. It's like you can find a metaphor for any experience you've ever had. And that when that's embedded into reality itself, it's a bit trippy when you think like that. Like you're like, okay, how do I explain this? And then you're like, okay, it's like a snowflake, or it's like a volcano, or it's like shaking frustrations, like shaking a pop bottle. It's almost like all our experiences, life has given us the physical, tangible experiences to ground our emotional experiences, because all our emotional experiences on a micro level reflect our macro environment. And it's like, sometimes, like if I ever feel lost in life, if I ever feel just lost and aimless, I'll just look at a tree. I'll be like, oh yeah, okay, how does a tree grow again? Okay, right, it's slow, and it just kind of sits there and deepens its roots, and it just gathers. The more it gathers, the more it grows. Okay, and then you just calm yourself down. You're like, okay, like I just need to gather experiences, gather knowledge, gather wisdom. And as I experience these things, I will grow and I will become healthy. And so it's just weird when you look at life, and it's just like life is just a whole bunch of metaphors. Like, and then when you look at like society, like my favorite metaphor for society is the cell environment. That like how should we, like, people like, oh, it's impossible to make 10 billion people work together. It's like, okay, how do your cells work? How, like, okay, maybe if we want to know how to utilize a government that actually works, how does the government of our bodies work? How do our mitochondria, how do our different DNA, RNA, like maybe we should be taking clues to our environment, our macro and micro environments, to figure out how to survive, how to live, how to organize societies. Because I think the clues are in nature itself, because nature itself is the perfect equilibrium. It's the perfect system. It's been around for billions of years and it's still here. And it's like, maybe we should study those principles, the Fibonacci sequence, like these kind of like the 80-20 principle. I think it's Pareto's distribution. And there's like Parkinson's law. And it's like, when you study these things, like I've taken the 80-20 principle, I think it's Pareto's distribution. And I've taken that to every aspect of my life. I try to make sure that 20% of anything I do yields 80% of my results. And then, because it takes the anxiety off me, 20% of my videos will yield 80% of my subscribers. 20% of my week, my hours yields 80% of my output. And it's like when you ground yourself in the very laws of nature, you can really simplify a lot of your anxiety.
No, my next one I think you'll really like. It's about social media.
Okay, go ahead.
This is good. I'm nobody, I'm everybody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? There's a pair of us. Don't make them aware. They banish us because of our view, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public like a tool. to tell your name the livelong day, to be an admiring fool.
I like that one, man. Yeah, I always love like,
because it's like I'm nobody, I'm everybody. Who are you really? Who are you? Do you really know who you are, or are you just playing a role?
yeah, facade.
Like that's how my mind dipped into so many different areas in this book that it's just like, and I have one single eye on the top of this little social media little.
Oh, I like that, man.
That talks about how that's the one thing that like, oh, I'm social media and I control with that one eye, and that's what I and then all these are illustrated in different ways. I'll show you one of my favorite illustrations that doesn't have a poem on it. I'll show you two of them. One of them is a dragon, like with spikes and different things. It's a dragon rabbit.
What does that symbolize for you?
That it symbolizes like that dragon of fear, and me being the UFO and the alien up here, like conquering that fear, and just like, I guess it's like just conquering fear is the biggest thing. And the other one I really like is this one, and it's between heaven and hell, and earth is in the middle, and that's like hell goes downwards and it swoops up into a spiral, and those are the gates of heaven.
Dude, I fucking love that.
And the earth is like floating right there in between the different realms, and there's different realms that I believe that are out there, and things that we can't necessarily see. And so like, that's how I believe like the devil is reading the book of death, and the angel up here by the gate is actually reading the book of life, and the earth is in the middle. And yeah.
Dude, I love that one. That's my favorite for sure. I love existential imagery. I love biblical imagery too. I love like Buddhist spiritual. Like I love duality. I just love the nature of like
that you get that there's supposed to be this always even balance, but between the realms, they're like, they try to get to earth and they can do certain things, but then it's like they can't break certain rules. And so it just makes you like, I don't know. I just sat there one day and I was like, I think that I just started sketching, and I thought that would be a good one. So
I loved that one, man. That one, because like obviously something is gonna speak to everyone, right? People, just certain things to speak to you. That one spoke to me. That one was a
why did it like
I purely from absolutely from a visual perspective, I love the color duality. I love the idea of like the staircase going up and then the staircase going down. And I just like, I like trippy imagery. I really like psychedelic kind of.
Like she's building a stairway to heaven.
Yeah.
That's a stairway to heaven. That goes from hell all the way up to the midpoint. And then it goes all the way into heaven, and the gates are right there.
Yeah, because like no, I've always been drawn to the idea of duality. That I've always been drawn to. I've never been someone who believes wholeheartedly in anything. I always question people, myself. And so the idea of heaven and hell simultaneously existing in balance, even if I didn't articulate why I liked it, that might be why I like it. I I like any art that shows balance in any way. It doesn't have to be heaven and hell, but I just like the idea of as above, so below, and just all these terms, all these ideas. I like the idea of darkness and light, and everything is in a constant balance, eternal struggle to define itself based on what it is not. And I find that very interesting.
Yeah, I just all of one day I was just like getting all these, like, after I wrote all the poems, I then was like, so what I did was I sketched, and then I made copies of it on my PC. So I have originals, and then I have the copies that I made were on high gloss photo paper, so that when I made the scan back to my computer, it scanned it differently. It was more vibrant. It was more like, it just looked really good. And then I formatted Microsoft Word, got all the formatting and that's a whole nother ball, because you have to like get all the margins exactly right and figure out all the, like, and I'm like, I finally figured out after like 3 hours of like being like, I want this book to be done. I'm almost done. I want to submit it to Amazon. I'm like, work. And then they're like, accept it. And I'm like, thank goodness. I'm just like, but it took a lot of effort. I love it, man. And I'm just happy that I get to do stuff like this. I'm happy that I get to connect with different people. I'm happy that I'm continuing to add things to my tool bag, to my mind. I really am, man. Like we talked last time about peaks and valleys, and how, and how, like, when you're in life and you're riding that wave of Medtronic, right? You're on top. You're like, yes. And then reality hits, and you're like going back down into the valley, and you're going for a minute, and then, another mountain starts to appear. Oh, that's another one. That one's even bigger. We can do this. So that momentum, that pushing up that mountain into the next valley, it's always going to be like that. You're never going to have this instant, mountaintop all the time. I conquer it, because then it doesn't mean anything. Then it doesn't mean as much. You have to go through those points. And that's what helps me write sometimes, and learn more, so that I can climb the next peak and I can go through the next valley. That's how I think is a good way to put it.
That was beautiful, man. And that's a great way to finish this portion of the podcast and go into the last final kind of statements and everything. So first of all, now that you've showed everyone, your artwork and your poems and everything, so for those of you who do want to get a hold of you, who wants to buy that, who's intrigued by what you showed us, where can people find you?
You can go on Amazon and look up my book, but I'll give you a copy of that link. I'll give you that info so you can put that out there. And then I have my Instagram, which is Art by David Fatino, and that's where I have over 1,000 posts on my Instagram. I'm crazy active on that. They can also find me on Facebook, David Fatino, and on YouTube, Disability Awareness, Abstract Art. I'll send you the links to everything. But they can find me on multiple different sites and stuff like that. My Instagram is the one I'm most active on. That's why I have 1,000 posts, and it's just easy. I take a picture of my art. Oh, cool. Or I take a picture of that. So that's where they can find me majority of the time. But you can go to Amazon and it's Art by David Fatino, Art and Poems by David Fatino, and pop right up. And but I'll make sure to send you the links so you can put that out there as well.
Beautiful. And to everyone watching or listening, if you have any questions for myself or for David, definitely leave them if you're on YouTube in the comment section below. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you can't. But anyway, if you do have any questions, leave them in YouTube. And if they're a question for me personally, I will answer them on the next podcast. And if it's a question for David, next time he's on, which I'm sure he'll be on again sometime, we will answer them together in the next podcast.
I would love that.
Beautiful, man. And David, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to reach different people, and thank you for being a kind soul and really just showing me a different point of view that I didn't see before. So it's you kind of clued me in on a couple of things that helped spark more inside of me, and I really appreciate everything. And thank you, seriously. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, David. And thank you very much for coming on as well. Likewise, these things are all give and takes, right? So you just never know what you will create with another human being. You don't know what conversations will go down. You don't know what pieces of insight will kind of lay seeds in your brain that will be watered for the next 5 years. And you'll just kind of look back and be like, oh, this idea I have now, oh yeah, it came from David 5 years ago in that podcast. The thing that I didn't think about for 5 years, but now it's changed my life. I've had things like that kind of happen. Just, it was the right piece of advice at the wrong time. And then it just sticks with you, and then it's with you until it's been watered enough to blossom. So thank you again so much, David. And to everyone watching and listening, thank you so much for tuning into the show this week. We will see you next week or whenever we do the next podcast. So I love you all. Have a good one. Peace.